I am Mona Lisa Roy Chaudhary, Guwahati University, Guwahati, and I'll be dealing with paper 13, module 7. It deals with the debate over women in combat. We have seen that since time immemorial, woman has always been considered the inferior sect. No matter how capable they are, no matter how far they have reached in their achievements, woman has never been given their due. And woman in combat is no different. Women are always considered to be in a role as a homemaker, as somebody who is very, very submissive, has always been at home, as a caretaker, as a caregiver. Now, when we talk about combat, it is something which, the moment we say combat, a male figure comes into our mind. It has always been a male domain. But we have seen that it's not that war or combat has been something where women were never involved. History tells us that woman has always been a part of war, directly or indirectly. So as we go through into these lessons, we'll see how woman has been in an active part in combat, and how people have argued, and there has been a great debate whether women should be included in the military or not, and why there are feminists, there are a lot of advocates who do want that women should be a part of the combat. Now let us go into the detail and the history of women in combat. Now in the introduction, let us talk about the woman who has taken part in nations' war efforts. We have examples of Rani of Jhansi, Joan of Arc, who had always been a part of war. How they have been in combat, and which has always been a male domain. Like woman has always actively supported a nation's war effort in supportive roles. However, one must remember that for as long as there has been war or conflict, there has been examples of women organizing, leading, and participating in combat. Civilizations from across the world have such histories. Example that I have already mentioned, Jhansi ki Rani, Joan of Arc, and yet war in general and combat in particular has remained a male domain. So as I've already explained that whenever we talk about war, about combat, it has always been a male who comes in front of our eyes. So it has always been a main domain. Within state militaries, although women have taken part in both direct and indirect support roles since World War I, we have seen that women has involved themselves in the intelligence services and also nursing, especially with they really help when the soldiers are wounded. So it is in a way they are always there whenever a war takes place. Women only recently been allowed to take part in active combat. This debate around women's participation in direct combat has seen fierce arguments from all sides. The debate over whether women should be allowed in combat continues till date. No, nobody acknowledges the kind of services that women give during war, and that is something that is of real concern. There has been immense debate on whether women should be given an active role in combat. So, women in combat debate. Now we come to the debate part of our module. So, the physical ability. People argue or debate over the physical ability of women. People who believe that women should not be allowed in combat roles cite the difference in physical ability of men and women. Woman has always been considered the weaker sex. Men feel that women cannot do what they are able to do in war. Women, they argue, are physically less capable of meeting the demands of the highly physical performance that being in the front line of a battlefield requires. They feel that women cannot have the courage or cannot have the strength of being in the front line in a battlefield. Combat units have been designed keeping in mind the extreme level of physical fitness of males. Women are not able to meet this required high level of physical endurance, or they have to stretch themselves to achieve this level. So these are some of the arguments that people have given to show that women cannot be an active participant in combat. Women who are physically not as fit as their male counterparts are seen as being a liability and not being able to help their colleagues when there is need to. An example that is often cited is a woman in the infantry who will not be able to drag their injured male colleagues to safety and will therefore be responsible for his death or capture. So they have always questioned the physical weakness of a woman. They feel that when their colleague is injured, they cannot drag their colleague to safety. In that case, the male colleague will have the danger of being captured by the enemy or may face death. So a woman's physiological characteristic like menstruation, pregnancy and early onset of osteoporosis also come in the way of women's performance in combat. Women therefore should be kept out of such physically demanding positions in the military. So the other argument that has come forward is that women has their regular monthly menstruation, they get pregnant, and there is also an early onset of osteoporosis, which is a condition of the bones. And the males or the people, they argue that because women are physically weaker, and because for either menstruation or pregnancy or osteoporosis, they should be kept out from direct combat. And this argument does not hold true, because we have seen that when there is a crisis, it's always the women who stand out in their services. Women are more prone to urinary tract infections. For a woman on patrol duty, hygiene is a constant problem. Urinary tract infection can lead to kidney infections. Women often have to be evacuated for a problem that has nothing to do with combat and to which men are not susceptible. Now, here is another argument that women are prone to urinary tract infection. Now, even males can be a victim of that. Males can get sick like women. It need not be urinary tract infection, and that is not an argument that holds any good when you come to recruit women for this kind of jobs. Okay, when you cannot argue that women are not fit for a job in the military or cannot take part in combat. On the other hand, women who have worked in the military as well as the advocates for inclusion of women in all positions in the military contend that if some women can meet the required standard of physical fitness, they should be allowed to perform all kinds of roles. So, women who are in support of recruiting women in the military argues that if a woman is fit, you have to set aside the gender. If a person is fit to join the military, should be recruited. Just the physiology of a person cannot be a hindrance to recruitment into a job. One's gender should not be a barrier in carrying out a task. Also, the standard of requirement, training, and design of combat role should not be set keeping the woman in mind. Opponents of allowing women in combat feel that there are different standards, it will weaken the armed forces. Now, women have said that we need not have a lesser physical stress or a lesser physical activity for women in combat. They are ready, if they are physically fit, if they are recruited in the military, they are also capable of being in the front line. It cannot be a hindrance to their recruitment. Then we come to the psychological makeup. There is a debate over the psychological makeup of men and women. It is believed that allowing women in military and in combat positions weaken the psychology of male soldiers. The following arguments are put forward by adherents of this position. So we have seen, another argument that has come forward is about the psychological makeup of the whole setup. They feel that if women are recruited into the military, men will tend to go away from their goal. And they have given reasons for that. The presence of women destabilizes the group psychology which is necessary for unity within the combat units. Likelihood of romance between men and women, if women are present, further weakens the male soldier and make him unfit for battle. And it is a widespread belief that women are inherently peaceful creatures and they are psychologically incapable of being aggressive. So these are the points they said, because women are, as I've already said, that they are caregivers, they're considered the caregivers, the caretakers. So by nature, they are very, very caring. And there is every chance that, when they stay together, when they work together, their kind of romance might rise and there could be distractions. And moreover, they say that, because women are considered as caregivers, they are psychologically weak. They are not strong enough to be in active combat. There is a fear of the strict discipline of the army being undermined by the presence of women. Men may be reluctant to take orders from or may be protective of their male co-combatants or officers. Men have been brought up to be protective of women. This chivalry effectively diverts male soldiers from their goals. So just like women are considered the caregivers, men are always considered to be very, very protective. So whenever there is a woman in their group or whenever they have a woman colleague, being of protective nature, men tend to protect them, and that diverts them from their main goal. So that becomes a challenge. Pro-inclusion advocates argue that it is training and leadership building which is necessary for group cohesion, and women's psychology cannot be blamed for the lack of it. So again, we have the people who are for inclusion of women in the military, and they say that it's it is a social setup, it is a mind setup that we consider or we think that women cannot face combat or cannot be in the front line. Okay, so they say that you cannot blame the psychology of women that because they are weak in nature and they cannot be a part of active combat. It's just a social construct that it is considered that women are weaker and they cannot be a part of combat. Then there is another argument that has come up, that is sexual harassment. We know that you need not be a part of military. Everywhere we go, women are sexually harassed at workplace, even at homes. So that cannot be an argument to keep women away from military services. Women in the military often face sexual harassment by colleagues and enemies if they are captured. Women in the military frequently also face sexual harassment by colleagues, and this is often cited as one of the reasons for why women should not join in the army. The attitude that women in the army will have to put up with sexual harassment from fellow soldiers because boys will be boys is often the reason why this serious crime is often not investigated. And this is a very, very serious allegation, because we know that women are sexually harassed. But it's, there are people who say boys will be boys and we forgive them. And even in military, they say boys will be boys and they never investigate into such serious crimes. And that cannot be a reason why women should not be in combat. Politicians like Senator Saxby Chambliss do not help matters when they attribute sexual assault to the hormonal levels of young recruits. But just by saying boys are boys, just by saying that, oh, he's a man, so he has every right on a woman's body, that cannot be an excuse for sexual harassment or to do away with such kind of crimes. Upon capture of women combatants by enemies, there is a very high chance that they will be sexually assaulted by the enemy. Hence, women should not be in the front lines at all. So again, they say that once they are captured, they are in the enemy camp, there is every chance that they could be sexually harassed. But opponents are there against this argument. Opponents of this argument state that when women in the military face sexual harassment within their workforce or units, it is the males who need counseling and a change of attitude. Women should not be penalized for the weakness of their male colleagues. This is a very strong point. As I've already said earlier, that we need to change our mindset. You cannot blame a woman for not being recruited in the army because she will be sexually harassed. It is the responsibility of the society to change the mindset of the man, where they will learn to respect women. Sexual assault should not be the biggest concern for women when being captured. Instead, it should be looked at as an occupational hazard. Besides, during wars, both male and female prisoners are at risk of rape and sexual assault. So they said, when the other party says that when females are captured, they might be sexually harassed in the enemy camps. But this sexual harassment is not, is not on women alone. We have seen that male prisoners of war, who are males, are being sexually harassed and tortured in the enemy camp. The another argument that the opponents say is that there is a problem with the logistics, that when we have women recruits, the prices or the expenses of the defense goes up. They say that opponents of allowing women in armies and combat also bring up the question of logistics and economics. Women in the army lead to more expenses because their needs are different from males. If separate barracks and toilet blocks are required, it will lead to extra expenditure. If they are housed in the same barracks as they are in some armies, other problems occur. Proximity of the two sexes lead to sexual encounters. Women soldiers become pregnant and males are distracted from their primary duties. So these are the arguments that are being put forward. Because when women are recruited, there is every chance, as I've already said, there is every chance if they're housed together, they might have some sexual encounter. We have seen that if we have women recruits or we have women in the military, they might want a separate toilet. They cannot go out in the open like the male colleagues. So there is a lot, they argue that, the expenses are going to rise. There is a problem with the logistics and the economics. Moreover, that cannot, again I said, that cannot be a reason, because the pro-inclusion camp further includes reasons like military readiness. That is, a mixed group of men and women prepare the military for diverse kind of situations. When you have both male and female in the military, they can jointly work in diverse areas. They can work in different fields. They can make divisions of work as per their capabilities. Modern warfare, which uses modern technology and tools like missiles and aircraft, it is easier for a woman to be in combat roles, and hence they should be allowed to do so. So you need not go to the frontier, carry the guns and fire at the enemy. With modern warfare, you fly aircrafts, you use missiles for which you don't need physical strength, you need brains. So that is very important, and you cannot say that women don't have brains, which is usually a social construct again, where it is repeatedly said that woman is a weaker sex or a weaker gender. The next point is the feminist positions on women in combat. Cynthia Enloe, in her book Does Khaki Become You?, states that a common assumption makes the military immune to feminist investigations. The military, even more than other patriarchal institutions, is a male preserve, run by men and for men, according to masculine ideas and relying solely on man's power. The military has been presented to women as inaccessible, a secret order that does not need women except as sweethearts, pin-ups or prostitutes. So we have seen how patriarchy has dominated the world. Forget about the other spheres. Military spheres have been a completely male domain. They are not ready to include women in their field. They feel that women are not capable to be a part in the army. They are ready to accept women in the periphery, like they can accept women as a prostitute, they can accept women in any other roles, smaller roles, but they cannot accept women in direct combat. They feel that they do not have the capability. And the male domination, the patriarchy is so much inbuilt that it cannot be pulled out of their minds. There is no single feminist position on women in combat. Opinions are divided. The pro-inclusion feminists believe that by keeping women away from combat positions, the states undermine women's capabilities and restrict her career choices. This position looks at gender as a social construct and the exclusion of women in the military is based on the social construct which assumes that women are weaker than men. So the pro-inclusion feminist, they again argue that why can't women be a part of the military? Just because it's a social construct that women are weaker, this job is not for women, you just cannot exclude. What do we do by doing that? They lose a chance of being employed in one particular field, and which is not fair, just because they belong to the female gender. Feminists believe that all positions within the military should be open to women. Women in military should have the option to decide if they want to apply for a combat position. The feminists feel that by excluding women from combat roles, the military creates and perpetuates the inequality between men and women. It makes second-class citizens of women within the army. So when the whole world is fighting for equality of gender, we see if we exclude women from military, we see how gendered they become, and we cannot do that because woman has equal capability of men to be in combat. We cannot treat women as a second-class citizen. They have to be given a fair chance to prove their capability, to prove that they are as strong as men. The feminist peace movement activists are, however, against the participation of women in war. So we again see that there are of the feminist peace movement people who are against women participating in war, and the reasons that they have stated are: wars are fought for security or supremacy of a nation state, which are masculinized notion of social control and hegemony. The military too is an extremely masculine institution, and it requires all persons to kill the woman within to be able to fight bravely. Interviews with male soldiers clearly show how deeply entrenched the gender bias is against allowing women in combat. So we also have feminist peace movement people who argue against women being participant in war. They say that, that female or the caring or the caregiver, the caretaker needs to be killed to be a part of war. You need to be strong enough. You have to have the ability to kill your enemy, and that means you are killing yourself within. The woman has to kill herself within to be a part of the combat. Feminists argue that a special role is played by the army in the ideological sustenance of patriarchy, because the very notion of combat and manhood helps to justify the superiority of men in society. Men's superiority is established in the military in myriad ways, beginning with recruitment, training, organization, and ideology. Gender is central to the armed forces and state institutions for enhancing particular forms of masculinity, because contrast between genders is used to promote physical powers of men in the military. Exclusion of women from combat therefore does not stem from the concern for women's physical or psychological ability and or their protection, but because they are considered inferior to men. So we have seen how indirectly, by not allowing women to enter into military, people want to prove that they are inferior to men, that army or combat, military, everything, is a male domain. So that is the argument that this peace movement participants bring forward. A similar idea is expressed in the following statement. Although the nature of conflicts varies from one historical period to another or from country to country, there are common root causes for sexual and gender-based violence everywhere. The root cause is patriarchy, which is the historically unequal power relations between men and women, which have to be laid to domination over and discrimination against by men. So we see that similar ideas have cropped up from different sections of the society from various parts of the world. It's not only that, in one part of the world this problem is there. It is universal. Woman, the root cause is patriarchy. We see that all the problem starts because the patriarchy is so much imbibed in our blood that we cannot accept women in roles which are not traditionally theirs. Traditionally, whenever we talk about military, it does not belong to the woman or the female domain. So it becomes very important that we start believing that the power of women and that they are equal to men. Another school of feminist thinkers look at women essentially as peacemakers and men as warmongers. They feel that women are inherently constructive and caring in nature. Since war or conflict is destructive, participation of women in war is against the very nature of woman. This has been repeated over and over again all over the world, that by nature women are weaker, by nature women are caregivers, so they cannot be as strong as male when it comes to combat. So they argue that women are again weaker than men. Some feminist critics, however, find this dichotomization problematic. The dichotomy of women as pacifists and men as aggressive deepens the divide between genders and limits the possibility of working for peacemaking together. They argue that the responsibility for war as well as peace rests both with men and women. So we cannot dichotomize like men, woman, peace, war, as if war is only a male domain, peacemaking is only for females. No. For any kind of understanding, there has to be a unity between both the genders, and for any policy making also, we must always consider men and women to be a part of it. We cannot exclude women from all problems. These experiences and voices of women show that the debate on women in military and combat will continue for some more time. It is only through change in construct of gender, power, masculinity and violence that women's role in war and peace will be transformed. So we see, after all these arguments and the debates that we have gone through, we can conclude that unless and until we change our mindset, nothing is going to change. If we have to bring peace, if we have to consider women are equal, we have to include them in all spheres of life, in all departments. You cannot categorize that this is for men, this is for women. Women are equally capable of participating in positions where men has always been there. All they are waiting is for a chance. Thank you.